Hello, look, it's me again, and once again I've suddenly found something I want to show you. And I'm not going to apologize for the sort of ad hoc shotgun nature of these videos, because this is precisely what would be happening if you were physically here in my shop, as my apprentice so often is, working over at his table, and I would say, hey, come here, I want to show you something I've just thought of. So in this case, a couple of further thoughts on splicing two pieces of cloth together to form an 8-yard length for a kilt, because this is, as is most commonly used in these occasions, this is a piece from a double width piece that I've ripped down the middle and I'm about to join end to end. Now the client has told me that he wants the pleats centered on this green line, centered on the blue, right? So where do I put that seam? Because it's absolutely crucial that the seam not be visible from the front or the inside of the kilt. So what I'm going to do, there's my two elements. So I'm going to fold, roughly fold, to show, okay, that's how it's going to be pleated. So I put my finger on the edge of, and right at this point, the width of the pleat isn't critical. So I'm putting my finger on that crease, and I put my finger on that crease. That's the depth of the pleat. There's the middle, and I turn it up, and the middle is just over from the yellow edge. So I've marked that with my chalk. That's going to be the seam on this face. And I look for the matching point on the next piece of cloth. That is going to be the seam on this piece. The yellow mark shows where I'm going to cut it to give myself about a 3/8 seam allowance there. So what I'm going to do, I've allowed myself a 1-inch seam allowance, because remember, it's going to be sewn there, and it's going to be sewn probably on about that yellow line. So I'm giving myself a 3/8 seam allowance. I reach for my scissors. I always take care not to lay the scissors down on the cloth. It absolutely gives me chills when I do that, because I'm always afraid if they're open, I pick them up, snip, I've just ruined the piece of cloth. So I always put them back again. I absolutely had goosebumps when I showed you that. So I've made the mark, I've made the cut to show where my just again over from my seam allowance. I give it a rip. I'm going to put that aside, because who knows, it'll be possibly good later. I'm going to do the same thing here, and a rip. And now I line them up so that the cloth, see the elements of the tartan, you can see, are precisely overlapped. And now I'm just going to pin this like crazy, and then start sewing. Now what is my fell is 8 inches. Fell is 8 inches. So the fell is going to come to there. So I'm going to sew it, this part, I'm going to sew it to about there. So that'll be a lapped seam in this case. Remember that last incident? It was a flat seam that I hadn't tucked the edge under, but in this case I'm going to tuck the edge under. I'm going to base this, sew that, flip it over, sew the other side. And when we're done, we're going to have a seam which is absolutely buried in the pleat. And it's a wide enough seam that you're not going to feel a ridge when you sit on it. And frankly, you're going to have to flip through. When I'm finished this kilt, I'm going to have to flip through to find where that seam is, because I won't be able to detect it otherwise. So thank you, and carry on.